Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar here. We have some information that we would love to share with a lot of our followers and supporters, and those of us who happen to find this information on social media or on our website or on our email listing. So we're going to talk about why are we here and what does this have to do with the Dine Nation and Yakama Nation. So yeah, we're excited to have you all here join us this morning, this great July morning. So for those of you that aren't aware, excuse me, if you're fairly new to joining us, we have a webinar that was developed, brainstormed, and brought together. And we're calling this Diné Solidarity for Pushpum. And the folks involved in this webinar, as you can see, they'll be on the screen. But the main folks who helped bring this webinar together, the organizations, we have Nizhóní Ání, which is a Navajo nonprofit. We have Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, and then we also have Columbia River Keepers. So those are the folks involved with creating this webinar and putting everything together. So thank you to everyone involved with this. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this webinar, and we've got a lot of really good information that we want to share with everybody who is joining us this morning for the webinar, and also what we hope to get out of this webinar as we go through. So before we begin with everyone's presentations and introductions, I would like to give folks an outline of what the presentation is entailing, and also some basic housekeeping that we would like to proceed with as organizers for this webinar. Okay, so the webinar outline. So this is the general outline that we'll be talking about for this webinar. We have the introduction. Within that introduction, we're going to be talking about the Black Mesa Pump Storage Project Summary for those who may not be familiar with what that's about. We also have Creating Solidarity for Pushpum, general discussion or presentation on what is that, and then also the Pacific Northwest Tour. So those are some basic introductions that I will be giving to talk about these items there. And then we will proceed with presenter introduction. So with presenter introduction, I would like to give time to a lot of our presenters here to introduce themselves, however they wish to introduce themselves. And then from there, we're going to start the presentations with what is pump storage hydropower, and that'll be done by Simone. And then we're going to go into next the Big Canyon Dam summary, and that'll be done by Dolores. And then we're going to proceed with Protecting Pushpum, which is going to be pretty much the larger piece of this presentation that we would like a lot of folks to listen to, and especially for those who aren't familiar with what this topic is. And then lastly, we're going to conclude with the call to action, where we would like everyone's help in our call to action here, especially those tuning in from Navajo Nation and also Yakama Nation. And then we're going to close off this webinar. And so that's just the general outline of this webinar. And as you can see on the right-hand side, we've got the basic logo here. So this is something that we were able to put together. Diné Solidarity with Yakama Nation, Protect Pushpum. So before we proceed with the presentations, I just want to go over some very basic housekeeping. So because we've got a lot of really good information that we want to talk about in this webinar, we're going to save the questions to the end if there is time. If there is not time, we will take note of your questions and then also post those answers to social media. So at any time during this webinar, if you have a question about something might come up, feel free to enter that into the chat, and our IT team will be taking note of that, and that way we will provide answers to you later, either if we have time at the end of the webinar or on social media later. So yeah, that's kind of the basic housekeeping. And again, we have everyone's mic on mute. So please, if you can, keep it that way, because we got a lot of good information that we want to share, and we don't want any background noise to kind of interfere, especially with this recording. And so our IT help here, Titus Burt, is our intern with Nizhóní Ání. And yep, there he is, waved his hand, and he will be the ones that will be taking control of the comments or the questions and things like that. So if you have any questions, Titus will be taking those, noting those down inside the Word doc. And also, if there is background noise, somebody who is not muted, Titus will be the one to mute them. So yeah, those are just some basic housekeeping that we want people to be aware of. With this webinar, again, we've got a lot of good information that we would love to share with you, and this, we're going to proceed. So, all right. So the webinar introduction. So again, my name is Adrian Herder, and I am with the nonprofit Nizhóní Ání. Chishit the net and shle is a fan of Bashish Chin. Zilt Aki on it as a che. Adult Sateshkish it as nale. She in late Zitlichin double on it. I used to think Nasha. I got egot nenshle. For those folks out there, again, my name is Adrian, and I am from the community of Hard Rock, which is located on Black Mesa in northeastern Arizona. And so that's where I come from. That's my home. And I am the media/community organizer with the nonprofit Nizhóní Ání. For those who are not familiar with what Nizhóní Ání is we are a Navajo Diné-led nonprofit organization that has roots within the Black Mesa, the Zitlichin region on the Navajo Nation. We were established back in 2000 as a result of Peabody Coal Mining's use of Navajo water for their coal operations. And so from that, we were able to mobilize together as an organization, our founders, to continue that work of water protection. So our website is also linked on this slide. So if you want to learn more, you can visit our website, www.nizhoniany.org. Again, the topics I'll be talking about is the Black Mesa Pump Storage Project Summary, and also creating solidarity for Pushpum and Pacific Northwest Natural Resource Tour. All right. So again, for those of you who are not familiar with what is the Black Mesa Pump Storage Project, this was a project that was proposed on the Black Mesa region on the Navajo Nation. This was a pump storage project. If you don't know what pump storage is, we'll explain that later in the presentation, but this was a pump storage project that was proposed by a developer called Nature and People First Arizona. And the project had 3 projects within this overall. I'm abbreviating it as BMPSP because Black Mesa Pump Storage is such a large name. We've abbreviated to BMPSP. So there were 3 projects within this Black Mesa Pump Storage. We have the north, east, and south sites. So let me turn on my spotlight. Okay. So I have the spotlight on, and this map on the right-hand side here shows you a blown up version of what that pump storage projects look like. You have the north site right here, you have the east site here, and you have the south site right here. And again, for those of you who are not familiar with the Navajo Nation in Arizona and where we sit within the greater Arizona state, my cursor here gives you the outline of Arizona. This is the general outline boundary of Arizona, the state here. We are located in the northeast corner of Arizona. And this dark green area right here in the middle of all of this brown, that is the Navajo Nation, or sorry, that is the Black Mesa region. So we are located somewhat in the central Navajo Nation. So that's the Black Mesa region. That's where we call home. Now here again, the blown up version of this map, you have Black Mesa's northern edge right here. And if you're not familiar with coal mining, the coal mining happened here on Black Mesa. The only coal mines in Arizona came from here. Coal came from here. And so we have on the northern edge of Black Mesa, the upper reservoirs, and on the base of Black Mesa were the lower reservoirs. And again, northeastern edge of Black Mesa. And according to the application submitted by the developer, this project proposed to use over 450,000 acre-feet of Navajo water. We'll go into a little bit more of why that is concerning for us. And again, if you want to learn more information about our efforts on this campaign to educate our communities, you can visit our landing page, www.tonizhoniani.org/no-BMPSP. All right, so again, more information on the background on the Black Mesa Pump Storage Project. So the preliminary, excuse me, applications were submitted to FERC in 2022. And then 2 years later, they were also rejected by FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, back in February of this year. Now, once between that time of 2022 and the rejection of the permit application or the applications, we had embarked as an organization, Nizhóní Ání, we had embarked on a campaign to not only share information about this proposed project, but also our concerns as Diné communities, communities that reside on Black Mesa, coal-impacted communities. And so we set out to not only educate, but also bring awareness as to why projects like this are very concerning. So with that, we were able to garner about 19 Navajo chapter resolutions opposing these projects, the Black Mesa Pump Storage Project, Northeast and South projects. For those that are not familiar with what Navajo chapters are, there are over 110 Navajo chapter communities throughout the Navajo Nation. And so of that 110 on Black Mesa, going back to this map here, the Black Mesa region right over here, of that 110, 7 chapters are located on Black Mesa. And so of these 19, 7 of them came, so 4 of them came from the Black Mesa region chapters, and then also surrounding chapters. So that was a huge, awesome turnout for that campaign. Was we were able to collect that many chapter resolutions of communities that oppose this project. And then also the Navajo Nation has repeatedly opposed these projects. So I'll go in more in depth on that in the next slide. But here's another good image here of Black Mesa's northern edge. You can see the Kayenta mine in the distance and the Black Mesa mine, and then the edge of Black Mesa. All right. So I talked about community concerns. So when it came to this project, these were the areas that we found very concerning as grassroots Diné communities located on Black Mesa. And our number one concern was excessive use of Navajo water. This was just outrageous. 450,000 acre feet is a lot of water, especially we're from a region that doesn't already have a lot of surface waters. A lot of our waters are groundwater. So that was a huge concern, was that excessive use of Navajo water. So if you were to compare 450,000 acre feet, that's 3 times what coal mining had used on Black Mesa for coal combustion and coal mining. So that's 3 times, and we're still dealing with those impacts of coal mining within our region. Number 2 was water source was not identified. So within the applications, they didn't exactly specify which water source they were pulling from, but they did mention San Juan River, Colorado River, and Black Mesa groundwater. Once we had seen that word Black Mesa groundwater, that was a huge concern for us because, again, we are still dealing with those impacts of coal mining on Black Mesa. And then lack of community consultation and transparency. Those of us that live on Black Mesa, our chapters, we were not consulted. We were not, there was no information that was brought to our chapters regarding this project. It was submitted in 2022, so no developer came to our chapters, our communities to get our input to say, this is what we're proposing, this is how much water we're proposing to use. So that was a huge concern, that they did not come to our community, given that they've listed our community's water as their water source in their application. And then number 4 was water evaporation. For those of you that may have been to Arizona, it's a pretty warm place. And when you don't have a lot of water and more sunlight, things tend to evaporate and dry up. So that was a huge concern for us, was water evaporation. And then lastly, land and wildlife impacts was something that a lot of our communities were concerned about, especially when you look at the northern edge of Black Mesa right here. This is a very beautiful place, green place, very high elevation, about 8,000 feet plus up there. And you can kind of see here, this is what it looks like from the plane. And so we had a community member by the name of Herb Yazzie who is a Black Mesa resident, and he quoted, as they destroyed Black Mesa with their strip mining, all the animals that used to be down there, meaning where the mine site was, they came up this way, meaning the northern edge of Black Mesa, and that's why we consider all this area north of us as a refuge for all those animals, and that's why we object so strenuously against the Black Mesa pump storage project. So that's a quote I wanted to highlight that referred back to land and wildlife impacts for this potential project. Again, I mentioned Navajo Nation continuously oppose this project. So based on their motion to intervene letter of Navajo Nation that was submitted to FERC, these are the 7 areas that were outlined in that presentation or inside that letter. And a lot of it reflected our same concerns as Diné people, frontline communities: lack of meaningful consultation, no consent from the Navajo Nation, land use impacts, impacts to water rights of the Navajo Nation, impacts to wildlife and plant resources, impacts to Colorado and San Juan River fish resources, impacts to cultural resources. So that's a lot of the concerns that this letter outlined there. And if you want to read this full letter, this can also be found on our landing page website, nizhóní.org/no-bmpsp. All right. So now that brings us to why are we all here? So Diné Solidarity for Pushpum webinar. So we wanted to create this space for our presenters to share information in hopes that this creates solidarity for folks up north, the relatives up north with Pushpum. And this webinar is a response to the proposed pump storage projects on Yakama territories and also Diné lands here in Arizona. And then also to bring more attention to this natural resource tour, which is the Navajo Pacific Northwest Natural Resource Tour. I'll talk more about that, what that is. And then lastly, the call to action. Again, our call to action will be at the end of this presentation. So please hang around for that call to action, because we could also use as much support as we can with this effort. All right, so again, Pacific Northwest Tour. So in one of their recent Navajo Nation Resource and Development Committee meetings, they approved travel for this tour, this Navajo Pacific Northwest Natural Resource Tour. The goal of this tour is to view large-scale irrigated agriculture and then also hydroelectric pump storage projects. So that was the whole intent of this resource tour, and it'll be taking place August 1st through 3rd, 2024 in and near Goldendale, Washington. So we got this notice fairly recently, so we eventually were able to mobilize together and get this presentation going. So that's the Pacific Northwest Natural Resource Tour with Navajo Nation, and we'll explain more who is Navajo Nation RDC and what do they do. All right, so for this part here, again, I mentioned Navajo Nation Resource and Development Committee are also what we call RDC here in the Navajo Nation. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jessica Kitso to explain Navajo Nation RDC.
Hi, good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Like Adrian said, my name is Jessica Kitso. I'm the community organizer for the organization Nizhóní Ání. Chisha Diné Tsedesh Gijni Bashishchin, Bilagana Dashache, Bimpatoni Dashanale, Zitlejin Date Nasha. So yeah, again, I just said my name, my clans, and I am also from the region known as Black Mesa. And I will try my best to cover this area. So go ahead, next slide. Yeah, so like Adrian said, this tour that's coming up involves RDC, or Resource and Development Committee, and the standing committee is a part of the larger Navajo Nation government. So it's very similar to the US government system, where they have a legislative branch, an executive branch, and a judicial branch. The Navajo Nation Council makes up the legislative branch. And a part of the legislative branch, there are 24 elected council delegates, and they are in charge of developing and enacting laws for the Navajo Nation. And then the 24 members, council members, sort of like have divided themselves up into standing committees, and they also meet, they meet weekly, and council as a whole meets not as often as weekly. I think we have like every turn of the season, we have a big Navajo Nation council session where all of the council are supposed to be meeting. But the standing committees meet every week. And there are 5 standing committees, and each delegate is appointed to a standing committee, and there's at least one from every agency. So there's 5 agencies. So, and there's also 5 standing committees. And one of those is Resource and Development Committee, or RDC. I think what you'll hear today is mostly people referring to it as RDC. Next slide. So RDC is usually the group of people that we as Nizhóní Ání, we try to engage with first when we're engaging with our central government. So RDC their oversight entails all of these different parts of our nation. So they try to oversee water, land, grazing, environment, all of that. And RDC is made up of 6 individuals. So you can kind of see how the amount of oversight they have is sometimes what we feel as community and grassroots sometimes can seem like it's a bit too much for them, because a lot of the things that they should be looking after and have a whole lot of background and research on, sometimes they fall short. So next slide. Yeah, like I said, there's 6 members in RDC. And I think these are some of the people that you might see when they take the tour up in your area. And I would just really encourage trying to get some sort of engagement with our leaders, because us on our end, we're really concerned about the hydroelectric and pump storage. And from my end, I'm not too sure what Adrian has kind of seen from his end, but from my end, I'm not really sure RDC understands the impacts and concerns of this hydro and pump storage. So be on the lookout for these people. Next slide. I think I'm done, right? I had 3 slides. Yes. So
Okay.
thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica, for that. That was very good to explain to our audience, who is RDC, what do they do, and what do they look like, the members. Again, so for those of you who are tuning in from our Navajo audience and supporters, these are the folks who are on Navajo Nation Resource and Development Committee. And also we've listed here the chapters / communities that they represent and come from. So you may see maybe your community on there. And so this is a good opportunity to, in our call to action, we will explain what do they have to do with the greater Pacific Northwest tour that's coming up. So yeah, these are the faces that make a lot of these decisions, especially here on the Navajo Nation. So we have Brenda Jesus, she is the chair here. We have Casey Allen Johnson, who is the vice chair. We have Shauna Ann Claw here, and we have Ricky Nez here, and then we have Danny Simpson right here, and lastly, we have Oto So right here. So these are the folks who are RDC members. All right, so as I mentioned in this presentation, I would like to give the opportunity to our presenters to introduce themselves, however they choose, and we will begin their presentation slide with that next. So these are the folks who will be introducing themselves. So, all right, so first I would like for Elaine, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Adrian. Nick Maitsky, Inish Wanisha, Wanishnai, Ku Shiaputimki, Elaine Harvey, Ku Washnash, Kultipa, Kumitpa, Ku Willawaitspam. I just introduced myself, greeted each one of you. Good morning. And I come from the Columbia River, from the Kumitpa band, and also the Willawaitspam band, which are located just, right near the proposed Pushpum water pump storage project, the Goldendale, also known as the Goldendale water pump storage project. And I work as the watershed department manager at the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. And, I've been pretty active in getting awareness out about this project through different media sources and interviews, radio, and just been out there myself, just trying to get awareness out about, the project and potential impacts to the Yakama Nation. And we invited Jeremy Takala, who is not able to be here with us today. Jeremy Takala is one of the 14 tribal councilmen for the Yakama Nation. And he also comes from the Comithpa band, which is just, our band. It comes just right here adjacent to the project site. And he has been a really outspoken advocate for protection of Pushpum, our sacred site. And, really wish he could have been here today, but it has not worked out. But I will share some statements that he has made in the past on another webinar that he has done with EcoTrust. Him and I have done many, we've done work together and did co-sponsored webinars similar, really to get awareness out. So thank you for this time.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Elaine. We can move on to Simone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Simone Anter. I'm Hickory Apache and Pascua Yaqui, and I am a staff attorney and the Hanford program manager at the nonprofit Columbia Riverkeeper. Riverkeeper is a nonprofit. We're a water quality organization with offices in Hood River and Portland, Oregon. And we're a team of lawyers, scientists, organizers, and activists all working to protect the water quality of the Columbia River and all life connected to it. And our vision is a Columbia River that unites people to fight for clean water, abundant fish and wildlife, and our climate. So for more than 20 years, we've pursued this vision, learning from and striving to work in solidarity with tribal nations in our region. And today I'm just going to talk a little bit about pump storage and our work with Yakama Nation to stop the proposed Goldendale pump storage development. So thank you for having me here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Simone. And then lastly, we'll have Dolores. All right. I'm not sure what happened to Dolores, but if she...
Shay Dolores Wilson Gary Inishia Ado. I am a Navajo and from the western end of the Navajo Nation. Being betrothed Nishle, Sitnajini, Vashish Chin, Kia Ani, Dasha Chedo, Tapana Dashanale, Ado, and Kodo Nitrashnet Dode. I'm going to introduce myself. I run a group called Save the Confluence, and it's a grassroots organization that was organized by a coalition of Navajo peoples, mainly elderly, and community members who fought against a proposal to build a escalate tram above the confluence of the Grand Canyon, which included restaurants, hotels, RV parks in the western end of the Navajo Nation in the canyon at the confluence. The group is dedicated to preserving the natural beauty of the Western Navajo Nation and considers the area sacred. It is also a place for prayers and a place of ceremony for veterans. I remember growing up there, my grandma, and we had a medicine man in the family who used to tell us, you know, before you decide to go down there, you say your prayer and you go down there. It is a place for animals that are at the canyon, the herbs. We have all kinds of plants out there that the medicine men use. When we fought the Escalade tram, it lasted for like 9 years, I believe. And we managed to defeat the developer who went before our tribal council, and the council voted it down with our council delegates, and only 2 wanted the Escalade to be built, while the rest 17 said no. And currently, we're fighting the pumps hydropower storage in the same area again, so which I will talk about later. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dolores, for that introduction and giving us some insight into your organization, where you're coming from. And again, for our audience who are not familiar with the confluence or what she was referring to, if you were to be at the Grand Canyon, a little further up east of the Grand Canyon, there's a merging of the greater Colorado River and the Little Colorado River, where those waters converge. That is what Dolores is referring to as the confluent. It's a very sacred site for not only the Diné people, but all the other tribes within the area that call this region home. So that's what she's referring to, the confluent. So again, thank you, Dolores, for that introduction. So with that, now that you all have got an idea of who our presenters are, we're going to start with these presentations on what how they're going to be contributing to this greater solidarity work and also this webinar. All right, so with this, we will jump back to Simone for this part of the presentation.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about our opposition to the Goldendale pump storage development. And I will just start by saying, here in the Pacific Northwest and, you know, across the nation, as the climate crisis is worsening, and we're really seeing the nation as a whole trying to move further and further away from fossil fuel reliant energy sources, we're beginning to see an urgent rush towards green energy. And specifically, we're seeing a rush to site and develop clean energy projects as quickly as possible. Yet this rush to develop, it's resulting in a proliferation of proposed developments, the burdens of which are resting most heavily on tribal nations. We're seeing also a greenwashing of otherwise harmful developments and a minimization of the destruction of tribal cultural resources, all in the name of a clean energy future. And a prime example of this is the Goldendale pump storage development. So what is pump storage? I think next slide, please. Yes. So pump storage is a technology that stores and generates electricity. It's essentially a giant battery that generates hydroelectricity for peak periods of demand. So when electricity on the grid is abundant, water is pumped from this lower reservoir, which you can see in the picture, through an underground tunnel into the higher reservoir. And then when there's a demand for electricity, the water is released from the upper reservoir. It rushes through turbines and then back into the lower reservoir, generating electricity. So pump storage as a technology is nothing new. There are around 40 in the United States and hundreds in the world, and they've been in operation for decades. So specifically, let's talk about Goldendale. Next slide. So this image right here is like a digital rendering of what the proposal will look like. it doesn't show the underground tunnels, which would completely, destroy this area. But so Rye Development is backed by the Danish company Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, and they want to build the largest pump storage development in the Pacific Northwest. It would be located near the John Day Dam on the Columbia River on the Washington state side of the river. And the plan would be to excavate 2 reservoirs. The Hilltop Reservoir would span 60 acres, and then this lower reservoir down here would cover 63 acres. The project would have an energy generating capacity of about 1,200 megawatts. And the estimated cost for this development is $2.5 billion and rising. It's a very expensive technology to build, and opposition to this development here is causing delays and therefore price increases. So this project also requires an extremely large quantity of Columbia River water to fill both reservoirs. So it is considered a closed-looped system. So once the water's filled, it's not continuously bringing in water from the river. However, for initial fill, it requires 2.49 million gallons of river water for that initial fill, and then 117 million gallons each year to offset evaporation and leakage. So a significant amount of river water. And then land across the development site is owned by the federal government, so the Army Corps specifically, and then it's administered by BPA. It also has some private ownership with a smelter LLC, a railway company, and some other private lands. And then Elaine's going to talk about this a little bit more later, but there have been 2 previous pump storage proposals in this exact location, but the last one was denied, I think in 2016 or 2017, due to the ongoing RCRA cleanup site associated with the aluminum smelter that used to be located where the lower reservoir will be. So here, both the state of Washington and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, are responsible for issuing several permits before this development can break ground. Both the state and FERC have conducted environmental reviews under SEPA and NEPA, respectively. And the conclusion of both these environmental reviews is that there is no mitigation that could undo the cultural and environmental destruction that this development would cause. So in both environmental reviews, the government acknowledges that the proposed Goldendale development would create a significant and unavoidable adverse impact to tribal nations' cultural resources. However, both Ecology, which is the Washington Department, and FERC concluded that despite this, the development should still be licensed. So problematically, FERC also conducted its environmental review and its whole licensing process so far without the comprehensive tribal consultation required by law, which is a blatant disregard for tribal sovereignty. And then FERC's environmental review has also failed to address several critical issues. It's failed to assess alternatives, which is a requirement under NEPA, and it hasn't looked at alternative locations to site this development. It's ignored, the environmental review ignored the large consumption of river water, impacts to fish, wildlife, streams, and wetlands. And yet this project is still being pushed forward. This pump storage development is just another example that we have in the Pacific Northwest of greenwashed energy projects that are placing the burden of energy development squarely on the shoulders of tribal people. Rye Development has also done a really good job of twisting public opinion when it comes to this proposal. Rye has falsely claimed that the Yakama Nation supported this development in the beginning, which was absolutely not true. They have promised an economic boom for Klickitat County through independent, though independent economic analysis has shown that the economics of this development are tenuous at best. And then we've also seen Rye offering money and jobs as a payout to the Yakama Nation in exchange for the destruction of this sacred site, an offer that's been firmly rejected. And this is a pattern that we've seen with this developer that's played out in Oregon with another pump storage proposal called Swan Lake, which is proposed on Klamath Modoc land. So this developer has a very sketchy way of handling its business and moving its pump storage proposals forward. So some of the main takeaways about this project, the first is that it's environmental injustice and it cannot be considered a clean energy. And the second is that it's slowing down our green energy transition. It's wasting time, money, and federal and state agency action on a poorly sited energy development. And it's putting new energy development on land that is known to be culturally significant, which is eroding trust between tribes, NGOs, and the state and the federal government's ability to consider and protect cultural resources, which is extremely problematic. And then third, this location is racking up development costs. So by continuing to press ahead when the Yakama Nation, surrounding tribes, and environmental groups are opposing development, RIE is adding to the $2.5 billion price tag. And that time and money would be better spent on a properly sited, actually clean energy project, right? And then lastly, this development destroys environmental and cultural value. Clean renewable energy really is essential to protecting our planet for ourselves and future generations. But to meet our clean energy goals, we can't keep repeating the mistakes of past energy development. And right now, we're really in a unique position to build a new and truly clean energy transition, one that breaks from past harmful extractive practices and one that does not exploit indigenous communities for the benefit of the majority, and one that does not come at the cost of sacred and irreplaceable resources. And it's just really not clean energy if it destroys tribal cultural resources. And with that, I will turn it over to Dolores and Elaine.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Simone, for that. I'm glad we were able to cover that because that really gives our audience, especially those of us here on Navajo, and also in the event that this recording might end up in the emails or vicinity of Navajo Nation Resource and Development Committee. I'm glad that you shared all that information there. Thank you, Kat. All right, next we're going to move on to Dolores. So Dolores, you have the mic.
Hello again. This is Dolores Wilson Aguirre. After defeating the Escalade tram at the western end of the Navajo Nation, we knew that was not going to be the last project that we will be fighting off. In the early 2020, a guy by the name of Steve Irwin, who's the manager of the pump hydro storage out of Phoenix, Arizona, submitted his applications to FERC. And I know during this time, we reverted back to when we were fighting the Escalade, that we worked with different groups and a lot of groups across the Navajo Nation and outside people outside, meaning outside of the Navajo Nation, joined us and helped us defeat the Escalade. So that was kind of like it was almost like a nightmare when we were dealing with the Escalade, but coming to this new project, it felt like, you know, a little bit different, and we were working with different groups, and we had to people had to set their differences aside, and we stood together. We were fighting for another's rights, and we learned from each other during this time through the fight. We had meetings to attend, events, and then we went to like huge tribal gatherings like rodeo and parade. That's how we worked together, and we learned from other groups. Anyway, the proposed Big Canyon Dam was started by Steve Irwin, who is, like I said, the owner of the pump hydro, and which he named the Navajo Nation Big Canyon Pump Storage Project. his idea was to generate electricity. The project faced fierce opposition from local communities, environmentalists, and indigenous groups. The developer, Irwin, initially listed 3 potential sites for the dam development near the Little Colorado River and the Botaway Gap chapter. He later dropped 2 sites and focused on the Big Canyon Dam project. The location is near the Little Colorado River in the western agency of the Navajo Nation. And the groundwater to be used was 14 billion gallons to fill reservoirs, then 3 to 5 billion gallons would be lost each year to evaporation. And 36,000 megawatts of electricity, more than the Glen Canyon usage, would have been generated. The initial comments were solicited on June 9th for Irwin's notice of a permit application. So during this time, about 25 comments were submitted objecting to the hydropower dam development. At this time, tribal.
All right, I think Dolores, oh, sorry, well, we lost Dolores. She currently said she was traveling somewhere, and so as you know, the reception sometimes.
Sorry, I got cut off a little bit. So it's not required to begin until the years down the line. Nevertheless, the Navajo Nation, Hopi tribe, and Hualapai tribe submitted comments expressing their concerns, and other groups. The Navajo Nation stated Irwin's project would have an adverse impact on the nation's land use, water rights to the Little Colorado River, fish and wildlife, and cultural resources. FERC opened comments again for Big Canyon stakeholders after creating its new policy on February 20th, 2024. The new policy requires consent from the host tribe for a project on tribal lands. By March 21st, about 30 comments were logged with FERC objecting to the hydropower dam, including the Navajo Nation, who strongly opposed the project. Save the Confluence families wrote a letter to the commission, plus other groups and the Navajo Nation. The group sent in a petition that had more than 80,000 signatures that opposed the dam that were collected off their website and Grand Canyon Trust. The group also met with Navajo Nation Department of Justice to share their concerns. The project is now officially canceled based on FERC's new policy requiring tribal consent. So the project is no longer in existence and being planned, but I know that in some areas, like in the Black Mesa area, the developers are aggressive and they keep coming back. So Irwin, he did not come to the chapter meetings, and we had invited him, but he did not come. And then 2020 is when the COVID hit too, so it kind of slowed down his progress. So it's important to always work with we found out it's important to work with other groups. And a lot of the river runners, the people that went down the canyon on their boats, joined us. And a lot of folks visited our website. There's a lot more information on our website at savetheconfluence.com. So me and my family are thankful that we were able to collaborate and coordinate with people like Nizhóní, Diné and other groups that joined us. I remember one time during the Window Rock Fair in Window Rock, Arizona, we had a big gathering for the parade, and then I don't remember, like 150 maybe participants, and we took our sign over there, Save the Confluence, and it from the start it was just a few of us, like 5 or 10 of us family, And then it was amazing, you know, what can be done with communications and working with other groups. Thank you.
Dolores, for that. Thank you for giving our audience here a background on not only the work of Save the Confluence, what you all have done in the grassroots level, and also the Big Canyon Dam and how that was also rejected by FERC in 2024. And then also Dolores had mentioned just being in solidarity with each other. Although we are all Navajo on the Navajo Nation, we come from different areas, different parts, very different, diverse landscapes. And so when it came to the Black Mesa Pump Storage Campaign, our education outreach, we reached out to Dolores to include Dolores inside this campaign, given Dolores and Save the Confluence's experience with that gondola and also the tram on the Grand Canyon area and then the Confluence area, and also the current work of Big Canyon Dam. And so I think that's the really a good thing, that staying together with solidarity, being in solidarity, especially amongst other tribal nations and other smaller grassroots groups. And the huge part of this, of course, here in the Navajo Nation, we still have a lot of native Diné language speakers. And so unfortunately myself, I am not fluent, but I understand some. And so that's where we brought in Dolores and others to also help us translate, but also to share their experiences of how being in solidarity and how these can impact our sacred sites, our land base, and how we go about using this land. So I want to say again, thank you, Dolores, for that. And then we are going to move on to, all right, Elaine. So this is a huge part of this presentation is protecting Pushpum. So Elaine will be talking about these slides here in this part of our presentation. And for those of you, our Diné Navajo audience folks listening here, this is a really good information that Elaine will be sharing on how we can all work together, and also the efforts that they've done so far. And what is Pushpum and how does it relate to all of this pump storage? So I'll go ahead and have Elaine take it over from here.
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about Pushpum, the site, and the significance that it represents to our people. Can you go to the next slide? So Pushpum is a sacred site to the Yakama Nation. It's also a sacred site to other tribes in the area, such as the Umatilla and Warm Springs. And in Pushpum, when translated, it translates to the mother of all roots, and it's a seed bank to many of our traditional foods and medicines of this area. As you can see in this photo here, this is the site on top of the proposed Goldendale water pump storage project. And you know, to the non-native people who live here, they refer to this place as Juniper Point because it has the juniper trees, which is a medicine to us, but also there are many other species, important, significant, that we gather here from the top of the ridge all the way down to the bottom of this ridge to the Columbia River, which we call Inchiwana. So Pushpum, you know, it's really significant. It's a high elevation area, and many of the high elevation areas in our region are significant to our people because many of, you know, that's where we're going to find our traditional foods, and that's where our medicines grow. And we continuously come here every year and we gather. Nearby this location, we gather our first bitter roots and our other lamations for our salmon feast in April on top. And then on the bottom of this ridge is where we gather our Indian celery and other species. And we honor our foods, you know, through annual feasts. And so this is like a really important food gathering area. It's a ceremonial area. It holds high significance to our Longhouse religion. And then at the bottom of the canyon there, there's the John Day Dam. But downstream right there is a village site, which is where my people come from on my mother's side. And that village site, you know, the traditional name is Willow White's Palm. And then there's also a fishing site there. And the traditional name of that fishing site is Ushnam. And, you know, when the dams were constructed, our people, you know, felt the burden of the hydro systems, all these hydro systems that are up and down the Columbia. Our people were removed and left homeless. And, you know, that's just an example And now today, the salmon, the steelhead, the sturgeon, all the important fish species carry the burden of hydropower. And we're seeing, our salmon populations decline. And so, this is just an example of how our people were treated in the past. And it's like a continuous problem. And it's happening again. We feel the pressure. Our elders told us what happened when the dams were built, and now we're feeling that same pressure on us and our resources. Can you go to the next slide? So, the Yakama Nation did create a resolution and did designate this area to be, one of the Yakama sacred sites. And, this is an important document that the Yakama Nation established. And for many tribes, we don't go out and, we don't designate our sacred sites out to the public because we were trying to protect these areas. They're really significant to us. They're archaeological sites, they're burial sites or village sites. And so, we try to protect these areas, but since we're feeling the pressure on this location for the third time, the Yakama Nation has been in opposition. And, they, through this resolution here, they designate this as one of the Yakama sacred sites. And, it's the tribal council's duty to protect this area on behalf of the Yakama Nation and the treaty rights that we reserve in this area. Next slide. And once again, here's a photo of myself, and this is, we're digging, we go here and we gather these different foods year round, and we use it for subsistence. And we still live off the land. We still go to these different areas and gather these foods, the salmon, the deer, the elk, all these different plant species, the roots and medicines, as well as the berries. And, we're still out there, we're still practicing our ways. And with this green energy movement happening, we're feeling the pressure on all these areas where we gather our foods, and we're feeling, the pressure on it. And as I work for Yakama Nation, I can say firsthand, we're dealing with over 50 solar and wind projects at one time in the Yakama ceded lands. And the Yakama ceded lands, is 1/3 of Washington state. If you look at Washington state, the Yakama ceded territories is the central third of Washington state. And these are the areas that we're, looking at and trying to protect some of these areas. Next slide. Yeah, so once again, this is the third attempt. And this is, if you look at this photo, this is, would be looking down from the top of the ridge down to the bottom, the potential pump storage. And on the Columbia River, on both sides, Oregon and Washington, we have tribal fishermen down there. And then you see the smelter site to the left, and that's a toxic, hazardous waste site. So, it's already sad, what they've already done. And it's like more, it's like, oh yeah, let's, to us, it's just a desecration to put a 30-foot diameter tunnel through our sacred mountain. And then, I just can't imagine, and I'm just thinking about the future. What am I going to tell my grandkids? Oh yeah, this was once our important sacred site, but it was desecrated. And then, we're just really hoping that we can have renewable energy that could be sited responsibly, and that our cultural and our natural resources will be protected, sacred sites, food gathering areas. And, I believe consultation at the earliest point is key with the tribes, so that the tribes can have say, so that they can identify and say, maybe not this area, for a project, because the tribes are not in opposition of renewable energy. It's just some of these projects that are cited in areas that shouldn't be cited in. And is that my last slide, Adrian? Okay. Did you want me to read some of Jeremy's?
Yes.
Because
Go
I know
ahead.
are we running out of time, or is that fine?
No, you go ahead, and you can go ahead.
Okay. So Jeremy and I did a webinar last year. Well, he did this webinar actually with EcoTrust, but him and I have done some in the past. And Jeremy Takala is, once again, Yakama tribal councilman, and he's on his second term. He's elected official. and he comes from the Comithpo band. He also comes from the Powanput band and the Salilo YM band. And, you know, so he works to for the 14 tribes, and the Yakama Nation is composed of 14 tribes and bands. That's why we're called the Confederated Tribes and Band of the Yakama Nation. And, you know, he's been a really outspoken advocate for this site and for other energy projects that, you know, that are impacting the Yakama Nation's treaty reserved resources. And so he's taken this concern to the regional level. So the affiliated tribes of the Northwest region, which is called ATNI. And so, you know, that's a assemblage of many of the tribes in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California, you know, and he's brought this to them, and they've created a resolution to support the Yakama Nation's opposition. But also from that, in July 2022, we also have a letter from the 17 tribal chairs of the 17 treaty tribes in Washington state, signed on to a letter and to support the Yakama's opposition, because they hold treaty rights and they are supporting the Yakama in this opposition to this project, because FERC is not listening and consulting rightfully as they should as a federal agency. And also, you know, they just want to support the Yakama Nation in that. And then more recently, he's also brought this to the National Congress of American Indians, and they also support the Yakama Nation in this fight. So, you know, he's been really advocating in bringing this issue out front. And, you know, we're trying to, you know, have awareness. We want awareness out to the public, and, you know, that sacred sites need to be protected, you know, to us. And there are other proposed water pump storage projects in Washington state that are on high elevation areas that are sacred sites to the Yakama Nation. So, you know, this would be the first if permitted and constructed. So, you know, I just want to share that much, and because I know we're running out of time, but thank you for this opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah, again, thank you, Elaine, for sharing that information with us on protecting Pushpum and the history about this area and why is it significant to your people and how it continues your way of life by having this mountain being undisturbed. For the audience people who are just now hearing about this, this is very much the exact same information that protection of sacred site is one of the biggest things that we are all pushing for as Indigenous people, especially on Black Mesa, which is why we were opposed to that pump storage, because our mountain, the Zihijin Black Mesa region, has already been impacted, and we're trying to prevent further impact to it, especially that groundwater disturbing that land base, exactly what Elaine had talked about here. So I wanted to make that connection again, Elaine, for that. So with that, I wanted to transition here into our call to action. So throughout this presentation, you heard information on Black Mesa, you heard information on the confluence, you heard more information on what is pump storage, who is RDC, what do they do, and also protecting Pushpum. So now, this is your chance to help not only the Yakama Nation, but also the Dine Nation and also other folks as well with this call to action. And so we wanted to go over this call to action and how you can help us in this efforts to protect tribal resources and also Yakama Nation sacred sites. And so the first part, excuse me, that I'll be talking about is the email. So the first part of this call to action is going to be the email letter. So one of the things that, again, as I had mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, Navajo Nation Resource and Development Committee members will be traveling to the Pacific Northwest in and near Goldendale, Washington, to learn more about large-scale irrigated agriculture and also pump storage. And the one of the things that's also Simone had talked about was rye development. So rye development is got operations there in the Pacific Northwest. Same thing can be said for down here in the Navajo Nation. They are Ride Development is also proposing a project in Western Agency, which encompasses Navajo as well, in this pump storage. And so that's the connection of how we are, Navajo is also going to be have other pump storage projects being proposed here in Western Agency on the Navajo Nation. And with the Navajo Nation Pacific Northwest Natural Resource Tour, our elected officials will be traveling up there to the Pacific Northwest to learn more about these projects. And so we wanted to, as soon as we found out again about that tour, that's when we again mobilized this webinar to educate and also bring awareness not only to our people but also most importantly to those elected officials who will be traveling up to the Pacific Northwest. And we want to ensure that they don't support the destruction of tribal resources and also Yakama Nation sacred sites, and that people here on Navajo also have concerns with some of these projects, as well as the people in the Pacific Northwest, Yakama territories, Yakama Nation as well too. So with this call to action, we are asking folks to email the 25th Navajo Nation Council, RDC members, to tell them do not support the destruction of tribal resources and Yakama Nation sacred sites. And I'm going to go over the instructions on how to do that. All right. So the first thing what we would like folks to do is we would like for you to visit our website, Nizhóní.org, I misspelled that. I need to correct that. But TONIZHONIANI.org/protect-Pushpum. So that's the landing page that we have this information on. So within that, there's going to be a template. There's going to be a Navajo call to action and also a Yakama and other tribal nations call to action template that folks can look at and download. And then we also have drafting that email, so ensuring that the email goes to Navajo Nation RDC members. And then also that we, in that email, you also can incorporate the blind carbon copy, BCC, various emails in there. So that way, we ensure that your message and your voice gets heard to now members of Navajo Nation RDC to show that you also don't support the destruction of tribal resources and Yakama Nation sacred sites. And then also you're going to send that email. So I'm going to go to our website really quick. I'm going to change out my screen. All right. So this is the website right here. Just double checking. Simone, is the website being displayed? Oh, okay. Let me stop sharing this. All right. Sorry about that. And then let me share my website, which is here. Okay, cool. All right. So this here is the landing page that we were able to develop here. It's TONIZHONIANI.org/protect-Pushpum. We'll share this information on our social media, and at the conclusion, once this recording is done, we'll also send it out to folks who are interested. But this is the landing page here. Again, here's some background information on the webinar. Why did we decide to mobilize this webinar, and who does it encompass, and also the call to action. And then right here, as I had mentioned, there's links to the Navajo call to action and the Yakama Nation / other tribe call to action. Again, we would like for you to email email a letter to Navajo Nation RDC members, calling for them to hear out the concerns of the Diné people, but most importantly, Yakama Nation, who are trying to protect Pushpum. So again, these are the members of Navajo Nation RDC: Brenda Jesus, Casey Allen Johnson, Shauna N. Claw, Ricky Nez, Danny Simpson, and Oto So. So when you go to the website here, you can click either or Navajo or Yakama and other tribe. For example, for those in the Navajo audience, if you were to click the Navajo link, it'll take you to a template here of the letter. So again, the emails of all the delegates are right here. We would ask that you blind carbon copy action@TONIZHONIANI.org, info@columbiariver.org, *_ this individual's last name here at Yakama Nation, Yakama.com. Sorry, I couldn't pronounce that, but also the subject line is here. And then this is the information that we would like for you to incorporate in your letter. And then you sign it off with your name, your address, and your email. And again, we also encourage you guys, please incorporate that blind carbon copy. So that way we know that your voice is also heard in this effort. So the one other thing that I wanted to also highlight, let me quickly go back to the Yakama side. Again, this is Yakama and other tribes, similar language, but also there's information here where you can change out depending on what tribal nation you are. But the one part that I wanted to have Elaine explain is this last section of this call to action for the bringing RDC to the Longhouse. So Elaine, do you want to go ahead and explain that a little bit more?
Yes, we would like to welcome the RDC delegates to our Longhouse if, you know, they're willing to come join us. We're actually having a Huckleberry Feast this during the weekend. So on August 4th, we'll be sponsoring our annual Huckleberry Feast, but that will be up in the mountains, and anybody's welcome to go up there. It's a place called Indian Heaven on the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. That's where we have our Huckleberry Feast. But if the RDC would like to come join us for our feast, or we can make arrangements to meet on Saturday the 3rd with, you know, the delegates to talk about, you know, in person, this how this project will, you know, be detrimental to our sacred site, to our resources. And, you know, I just think having one-on-one with them would, you know, be beneficial. And if possible, you know, if you would like to do that, you can contact me on my email, or my, yeah, email's probably fine. And I can make arrangements to have our chief, who his name is Bonsco Jim Jr. of our band, and possibly other elders and councilmen on Saturday. So I'm just have an open invitation. Thank you.
That's a very good part that we wanted to incorporate in this call to action, is that you're going to be traveling, RDC will be traveling up to Yakama territories. Why not listen to the First Nation peoples of that area on why are they protecting Pushpum? So again, thank you, Elaine, for incorporating that and bringing up that idea, because that's very important. Because again, here in Navajo, food community is very important. And so if that opportunity is available, it will be available. We highly encourage members of Navajo Nation RDC to attend that, to learn from Yakama Nation on why this project is very concerning to them, especially their sacred mountain of Pushpum. So that's one of the parts that we wanted to highlight. Again, we'll make this link available. It's also on our socials. The call to action is live, so we highly encourage a lot of folks to submit a letter to Navajo Nation RDC to let them know that, again, we would not want them to support the destruction of tribal resources and Yakama Nation sacred sites. So the next part, and if you have any other questions, well, actually, I'll get to that later, but the next part, I want to give some time to Simone as well to talk about public comments too. So let me go ahead and shift that over, and go ahead, Simone.
Yeah, thank you. So currently the Goldendale pump storage proposal is it does not have a final license yet from FERC. So right now is a great time to let FERC know that there is opposition to this proposal. FERC staff have recommended to the commissioners that they issue a license, but currently the phase is the commissioners are reviewing the docket. So any comments that we can get in there talking about opposition to Goldendale and protection of sacred sites would be great. I just put a link in the chat and I can share my screen, but if you visit columbiariverkeeper.org and our Take Action pages, you can submit a comment through our live Take Action here. And if you scroll down, talks a little bit about Pushpum, and then has a letter to the FERC commissioners. And you can just fill it in and include any other additional information. And we are submitting these into the FERC docket. And then we also have a lot of background information here, and a video from Yakama Nation as well, if you just want to learn more.
Awesome. All right. Again, thank you, Simone, for that. And just a quick recap for folks who are still who had questions. We are holding off the questions. So it looks like we're almost out of time, but again, our intern, Titus Burt, will be collecting those questions. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop it into the chat, and our intern will take those questions and we will have answers to you, and then we'll also provide them on our social media, the questions or the answer to those questions. So yeah, that's the call to action again for the Navajo and Yakama audience members who are listening in or who might hear this recording later. This is a very good call to action that we would really highly encourage folks to take. Yakama/other tribal nations, especially those in the Pacific Northwest. This is a very good opportunity to voice your concerns to Navajo Nation RDC about this project, and also proposed projects here in the Navajo Nation. Again, public comments that Simone had provided. She shared her screen. Again, we'll make all of this available as well once we can condense this video or export it for viewing later. And then lastly, I wanted to close off this presentation by thanking everybody. Thank you to everyone who joined us this morning to learn more about what is happening here on Navajo in regards to pump storage and also Pacific Northwest, and how do they tie together. And that is with the Navajo Natural Resource Tour, and also the developer that's got projects both in Yakama, Pacific Northwest, and also proposed projects here on the Navajo Nation. So again, thank you to everybody for joining us for this webinar. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and our intern will take note of that. Again, my name is Adrian Herder, and I am the media/community organizer with Nizhóní Ání. I was the campaign lead for our No BMPSP campaign that we did last summer. And so I just wanted to also make my email available if anybody else has any questions. Maybe there's media in the audience or media who may be seeing this recording later. If you have any questions on maybe a quote or what is this, what happened here, what things like that, you can email me at adrian@tonizhoniani.org, TONIZHONIANI. And that's my email right there. And again, if you want to look at the call to action, a little bit more background information, we're going to have this recording linked onto our website as well, to the landing page of Nizhóní Ání, TONIZHONIANI.org/protect-Pushpum. So this recording will be housed there. That way you can share it with other folks, maybe in your network, in your community, or your council delegate who might be tuning in, or who you want them to tune in. You can share this link with them to say, this is very important. I believe you should be watching this, and take action with this. I also wanted to hand it over quickly to our presenters. If you all have anything else you wanted to say before we close out this presentation.
Adrian, yeah, I just want to be thankful again to be able to, express to each one, the importance of this sacred site to us, and how important it is for us to protect it. We speak for all the resources that can't speak for themselves, and that's key to us. And protection of these important areas for, as you see in this photo, our youth and our children and those yet unborn, in many generations down the road. That's how we feel, and how we look into the future, and just want to protect what we could. But thank you for this opportunity, and all the listeners.
And I want to just say, this is Dolores. I just want to say thank you for people listening in. And I forgot to mention that our group, Save the Confluence, is working on a legislation to bring before the Navajo Nation Council to make the confluence a sacred site. I know it's It's been difficult, but we keep going, and hopefully we will go before our leaders at the end of this year or the beginning of next year to designate the confluence as a sacred site. And I always say it's our church too, you know, just like a person goes into a church, you know, it can't be destroyed. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on this webinar. Adrian, Titus, and Jessica, thank you so much for reaching out, and I hope we can continue to work in solidarity in the future.
Awesome. Again, thank you all. And lastly, on this slide, if you want to stay connected with our organizations and our efforts that we're doing, Nizhóní Ání here, you can find us all on our social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, what was Twitter, now X, Facebook, all that, LinkedIn. We can be found at Nizhóní Ání, one word, no high tones, none of that, and our website right there. And also, again, Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, they can be found on social media at CRITFC, and their website also is there too. And then lastly, Columbia Riverkeeper, at Columbia Riverkeeper, and that's their social media handles. They can be found on social media platforms. So again, if you have any questions, you have my email. And also feel free to contact others, but I can also funnel the messages to folks that way. Again, thank you everybody for joining the webinar, and we will post the answers to those questions on our social media platforms. And huge thank you everybody for working on this webinar and also creating that solidarity, that collaboration to ensure that our sacred sites are protected, our resources are protected, and that we ensure that we're, again, like our executive director Nicole says, we're borrowing from future generations, future ancestors. So we need to ensure that we make sure that they have something for the future and for their future as well, and their ancestors' futures as well too. So with that, we are going to conclude our webinar. So that'll conclude this presentation. And then as far as the organizers for this event, I will ask that you all stay on the line, and we're going to quickly do a debrief of this event. So again, thank you to everybody for joining us on this webinar. We'll conclude it right here, answer those questions on social media, and that concludes it. Thank you, everybody.